Yo, what is good, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Hope y'all are having a great weekend so far. Today I'm going to be breaking down some of my favorite tournament or GPP plays for this Week 8 NFL DraftKings main slate. Like I always do, I'm going to break down a couple of my favorite game stacks, some of my favorite individual plays and stacks, and then wrap up the video with one of my favorite value plays. With that being said, let's dive into my spreadsheet here. And we're going to kick things off here like we always do in the top left-hand corner with those highest implied game totals. Now, I talked about this in my cash plays video yesterday. Make sure you go check that out. We only got one of these games coming in with an implied total above 50 points. We got two that are very close here between the Raiders and Saints, Cardinals and Vikings, but outside of that, it is projecting to be a relatively low-scoring slate. I also got the highest implied team totals listed behind me there. You can always use that as a reference point as I'm going through some of my favorite tournament plays. With that being said, let's kick it off with a couple of game stacks that I like here. And I know that Dolphins and Lions game is going to be very popular, especially on the Dolphins side of things. I'll talk about the other side with the Lions once we get down to Jared Goff there, but I like attacking these other two games here that have the implied total of 49 or 49.5 points, starting with this game here between the Minnesota Vikings and the Arizona Cardinals. Now, this game here is actually projecting to be the fastest played game on this main slate here, with both teams ranking in the top 6 in adjusted pace so far this year, and neither one of these secondaries have been very good either. The Vikings defense ranks 21st overall in pass DVOA, and the Cardinals defense ranks 27th overall in pass DVOA. So needless to say, both of these secondaries are very beatable, which is why I'm attacking this from the passing side of things here with no running backs. I got Kirk Cousins stacked up with Adam Thielen and Irv Smith, running it back there with DeAndre Hopkins, who looked pretty damn good in his first game back from suspension last Thursday night. Now, we can mix in Justin Jefferson. He's in play most weeks. We got guys like Robbie Anderson who could fly under the radar, or even someone like Zach Ertz if you want to roll with the tight end on the Arizona side of things. So there's a number of different routes or players that we can mix in here, but I like this game in general, especially playing indoors. As we get further into the season, we get some nastier weather, and I'm not really seeing that here this week in Week 8, but playing indoors, I always give that a little extra boost. And then this other game stack that I like here between the Saints and Raiders is also being played indoors, so I do like that, especially considering the Raiders are accustomed to that, playing indoors in their own building. Now, both of these teams here rank top 7 in points scored per game this season, while ranking bottom 7 in points allowed per game. So needless to say, there is some high scoring potential in this one here. I like stacking it up with Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, and Hunter Renfrow, and then running it back there with Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave on the New Orleans side of things. And I have seen some people talking about Andy Dalton this week, but I'm looking at his numbers here, and I know he kind of came back in garbage time. I think he threw for 170 yards in the fourth quarter last week. But outside of that, he's played in high-scoring games, but the production has not been there. However, we've seen some of their skill players definitely get there, like Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara. And with AK here, Taysom Hill has stolen so much from him in the red zone and towards the goal line. I believe he's bound to have a touchdown year sooner than later, and could even have a multiple touchdown game. There's a handful of other players that we can mix in on this stack, but if you go with this stack here, that leaves you with about $4,400 left over per player to fill in a running back, tight end, flex, and defense. Now, folks, before we dive into some of my favorite individual plays here, if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. Alright, now diving into some of these individual plays and stacks here, we're going to kick it off with the quarterbacks, and man, I really wanted to highlight Jalen Hurts here, but I did talk about him in my cash plays video yesterday. I think we all understand what we're getting out of Jalen Hurts. Safe floor, high ceiling type of play, someone who can go for 30, 40 plus DraftKings points, so he'll definitely be in my tournament mix. But I wanted to highlight Jared Goff here. I mentioned earlier, his game is going to be popular in general, but a lot of people want to attack this game from the Miami side of things. So I like rolling with Jared Goff here because you're getting exposure to the highest implied total on this main slate, from a contrarian approach. Tua's projecting to be around 15% ownership here on this Sunday slate, whereas Goff is projecting to be around 5% ownership. And Jared Goff has not been bad at all while playing at home this year. In 3 home games, he's thrown for 10 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and in 2 of those games, he threw for 4 touchdowns. Compared to on the road, he has just 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions in 3 road games. So been significantly better at home, very cheap price tag here at $5,500, and it's easy to stack him up with his pass catchers like Amon-Ra St. Brown, TJ Hawkinson, Josh Reynolds, or you could even mix in someone like DeAndre Swift, who is projected to be back this week. Now, moving over here to the running backs, and I usually try not to highlight 2 running backs who are priced above $8,000, like I did here with Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey, but I love me some Derrick Henry this week, and I'm going to talk about him here in just a minute. And then I was looking into Christian McCaffrey, and we all know he just got to the 49ers, probably still learning the playbook a little bit, only played 28% of the offensive snaps last week, and while we expect a larger workload here this week, I don't expect him to play 80% of the offensive snaps. However, then we got word that Deebo Samuel is not going to play here on Sunday, which should increase CMC's workload just a little bit more and really give him all of the red zone and goal line looks at the running back position. We all know that Deebo mixes in there, but what I really love about this play here is even though he played 28% of the offensive snaps last week, he still had 10 touches in that game. So let's say he plays 50% of the offensive snaps this week, and I think he could even play closer to 60-70%. If he plays 50% though, it's not crazy to think that he still gets 15-20 touches in this game, and CMC has that game-breaking ability to where he can score from anywhere on the field. So yeah, CMC here projected for less than 10% ownership. Gonna play more in general this week, especially with no Deebo. I had to add him to the list. But one of my favorite running back plays here this week is Derrick Henry of the Tennessee Titans, who has annihilated the Houston Texans over his past 3 games. And I talked about this in my Cash Plays video yesterday, so I'll keep this short and sweet. But just look at the numbers off to the right-hand side in the notes. In his last 3 games against the Texans, he's racked up a combined 673 total yards and 7 touchdowns. I legit had to triple take that. I go, what? That can't be true. 673 yards and 7 touchdowns in 3 games? That seems unrealistic, but if you go look at his game log, it is very true, and this Houston Texans defense has been no better this year, ranking dead last in rush DVOA. And then I got Raheem Mostert there of the Miami Dolphins sitting at a pretty nice price of $5,900. Ever since week 4, he has taken over as the RB1 in this Miami backfield. We all know that Chase Edmonds was vulturing some things early on in the season, but that hasn't been the case since week 4. It has been Mostert's backfield, averaging around 18 touches per game, in a great matchup here against the Detroit Lions, whose defense is also abysmal and ranks 29th overall in rush DVOA. I honestly don't mind doing a little game stack there. You could roll out Jared Goff with Amon-Ra St. Brown, TJ Hawkinson, and then run it back with Raheem Mostert and Tyreek Hill, or even Jalen Waddle. Now, speaking on those guys, let's move over to the wide receivers, where I have Tyreek Hill and Amon-Ra St. Brown listed at the top. I mentioned this in my Cash Plays video yesterday. There's kind of a big 4 wide receivers this week on the main slate. We got Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, and Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is the cheapest of those 4 in the best matchup against this Detroit Lions defense, who rank 31st overall in pass DVOA. And looking at FTN here, they have a wide receiver cornerback matchup chart. No wide receiver has a better matchup this week than Tyreek Hill against this Lions secondary. And then on the other side of that game, it's easy to stack up Amon-Ra St. Brown with Jared Goff. I mentioned TJ Hawkinson, who you can see I got listed there. I mentioned Josh Reynolds, who's cheap at $5,000. You could definitely go that route, or even get a little more contrarian with DeAndre Swift at the running back position. But Amon-Ra St. Brown does have a good matchup here as well, as Miami's defense ranks 25th overall in pass DVOA. Let's not sleep on Amon-Ra either. I know he's been banged up here over the last handful of weeks, was dealing with that ankle injury, then he had a concussion last week, but prior to that, and really towards the end of last season, he was absolutely fantastic. He had like, 6, 7, 8 straight games with 8 catches and double-digit targets. He carried that into this season. He was fantastic in his first 2 weeks. He had that 42-plus DraftKings point game back in week 2. The upside is by all means there, especially in this game here that has shootout potential. Now, there is a unique narrative that we can run with here in Week 8, and that is the trade deadline narrative, which is happening next Tuesday on November 1st. Brandin Cooks is a candidate for that. On the Houston Texans, there is rumors that he's going to be traded, and it makes sense. Texans are in rebuild mode. Brandin Cooks is probably past his prime, but still a good and athletic wide receiver. He hasn't really shown that much upside here this year, but he also plays on the Houston Texans, so I'll give him a pass there. But assuming that he is truly a trade deadline candidate, we should see the Texans force targets his way in a very good matchup here against this Tennessee Titans secondary, who have not been very good this year, allowing 43.6 PPR points per game to opposing wide receivers. That's the third most in the NFL. And then I got Wan'Dale Robinson there of the New York Giants, who has seen a steady role here in this offense over the past 2 weeks. We kind of saw that back in Week 1, and it was such a small sample size. I mean, very, very small sample size before he got injured in that game. But in the preseason, we saw him used in a number of different ways. And I didn't have enough room in the notes off to the right-hand side, so I want to show you a video of him here in just a minute. But like I said, he has really had a steady role here over the past 2 weeks. Just looking at his Week 7 snap count, he was number 2 on the team in both snaps and routes run at the wide receiver position. But let me show you this video here quick. Alright, so here's their game last week against the Jags. You can see Wan'Dale at the top there. They're going to put him in a pre-snap motion and then essentially give him a jet sweep. This counts as a pass from Daniel Jones, but as I mentioned earlier, they just want to get the ball in this guy's hands. That's what they did during the preseason, and let him use his athletic ability once the ball is in his hands. So watch this play here. You're going to see exactly that. So you see him come in motion there. Now he's going to come back, and he's going to get this jet sweep there. And then it looks like he's going to get tackled right about there, and then nope, whoop! We're bouncing off of it, going for an extra 15 or so yards. So he's super talented. Like I said, they just want to get the ball in his hands and let him make plays just like this. We're going to watch it one more time. And nope, I'm gone. You know, breaks that tackle there. Maybe he's got a touchdown. Who knows? And then I got a couple of tight ends there for you. No Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews this week. Darren Waller's a bit banged up. He very well could play on Sunday, but battling a hamstring injury. George Kittle is on the slate as well, but I foresee myself spending below $5K, and I talked about a handful of other tight ends in my cash plays video that will be in my tournament mix, especially if I need that price savings. But the first guy I got there is TJ Hawkinson. Again, easy to stack him up with Goff at a good price of $4,900, in a good matchup here against this Miami secondary, who are 23rd overall in DVOA against the tight end position, giving up the 8th most receiving yards and the highest catch rate. And then I got Pat Freiermuth there of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who's in a tough matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles, but one of the areas they have been a little more susceptible this year is against the tight end position, and this is likely a game where the Pittsburgh Steelers are trailing, having to throw the ball quite a bit. Now, we've seen Freiermuth here have 7+ targets in 4 of 6 games this year, and you might go, okay, well, what about with Kenny Pickett? Well, last week we saw him have 9 targets from Pickett and 8 receptions in that game, so I really do like this price here at $3,900. And then I got a handful of different defenses that we could go with here. I don't mind spending up for the Cowboys defense, going up against Justin Fields. That Cowboys defense creates pressure against everyone. Justin Fields is not afraid to take sacks. I got the Titans defense there. You could do a little running back and defensive stack there with Derrick Henry and the Titans, just like I mentioned last week actually, where the Titans did score a defensive touchdown. Good matchup there against Mills. You got the Jets playing Mac Jones, who hasn't looked all that great this year, and the Jets defense has been sneaky good. And then the Commanders there playing against Sam Ehlinger of the Indianapolis Colts in his first NFL start. And then I got a low-priced option or sub-4K wide receiver play there, Marquez Callaway. I talked about that game earlier. He's one of the players that you could mix in on that game stack, but I did want to highlight him here because while he's still playing quite a bit, his numbers have not been that great, but he's got ridiculous speed, and he is truly a boom-bust player. This is a guy who could legit have 2 catches in this game for 100 receiving yards and a score. But he's now seen 6+ targets here in 3 of his last 4 games, so some decent volume there. And he's still running routes as the wide receiver number 2. He played 72% of the offensive snaps last week and ran a route on 79% of Andy Dalton's dropbacks. So you can mix him in on that stack if you wanted to. You could play him as an individual one-off play, but he does have a good matchup at home here against this Raiders secondary, who ranks 30th overall in pass DVOA. Alright everyone, that is going to wrap up this video here for today. As always, thank y'all for taking the time out of your day to watch the content here on this channel. If you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. Let's have ourselves a great weekend here, folks. Let's win some money here on this main slate. I'm out of here.